Next group is, the title is Protecting Water Quality and Promoting Sustainable Forest Management in the New York City Watershed.
Hello, my name is Sydney, and this is Cameron, and we are part of Columbia University's My Woodlot team. My Woodlot tasked us with creating stewardship stories for their website, and Cameron go more into who My Woodlot is and what organization they represent.
So the Watershed Agricultural Council is an organization that works in the Catskill watershed, which supplies the New York City water system, and they partner with landowners to develop a whole bunch of different projects for ways to improve water quality. That ranges from large farms to single homeowners and different ways that they're able to do that. Specifically, we worked with My Woodlot, which is a website that was developed through the Watershed Agricultural Council for targeting landowners who have a part of their property in forest and different things that they can do, again, kind of on a smaller scale to improve water quality, limit erosion, which has effects for us downstream here, as well as costs for cleaning the water. And so we developed a bunch of different tools for them to kind of broaden their impact.
All right. So we had a four-pronged strategy. The first was to make connections with city organizations and individuals who are doing work in the city that could be either replicated by landowners in the Catskills or landowners in the Catskills would find interesting. Secondly, we wanted to craft stories using photos and videos into engaging content that My Woodlot users would want to look at and click on. Thirdly, we wanted to distribute this information through their Facebook page, hopefully in the future other social media sites that they'll create, as well as on their website. And lastly, we wanted to generate a broader marketing strategy for My Woodlot to use in order to create a larger base and larger user activity on their website and social media sites.
So we targeted this in a few different ways. The initial kind of main deliverables that they wanted were 2 stewardship stories, which is something on their website which they'd already developed a little bit. And so that was kind of our foundation and jumping off place. And then from there, trying to figure out a kind of broader marketing plan. And so we had a little bit of flexibility in how we, achieved some of these goals. And so they had some of an idea, and then kind of through working with them and really thinking about the project, we were able to identify some areas for improvement. So we developed a few different things, the stewardship stories, and then some blog posts, as well as the social media and marketing for tips and tricks, things they could do to improve their impact. And so to do that, we kind of identified some different organizations around the city and examples of urban stewardship that link to projects in the watershed to try and develop this connection that they were really looking to highlight.
So the first step in our process in order to craft these stories was simply just to research organizations and individuals who we would want to contact in order to create content with them. This was probably the harder part of our project because it involved making sure that we were contacting organizations that our client wanted us to contact and thought was good for their website. The second step was to reach out to the relevant members of these organizations. So this was a waiting period where we had to wait for them to get back to us. We really wanted to get photos and videos in our stewardship stories and blog posts. So we prioritized organizations that wanted to meet with us in person. So that leads us to the third step, which is the site visit. The site visit was my favorite part personally. We got to go see for ourselves what they were doing, what these organizations were doing in the city to promote sustainability. That was a very cool thing to do. We did the interviews on site as well to create the content for My Woodlot's social media site and My Woodlot page. And then the fourth step was all the behind-the-scenes stuff, which was just compiling the content in an engaging educational way that My Woodlot users would want to click on and learn more about either the stewardship story or the blog post that we had created.
So these are just some examples of some of the projects that we ended up focusing on. We contacted a pretty wide array of projects around the city. Some were better for kind of a broader marketing strategy, which was something we were really looking at. The client was really more interested initially in having really specific examples that were more for their current demographic of older landowners in the watershed. And so there was a bit of a limiting factor initially, but we kind of, through working with them, came to both better understand on our end what it was that they were looking for, as well as, I think, shifting their perspective a little bit so that they realize that, they can have a broader impact, and that targeting maybe a younger demographic or people that are, going to be landowners in the future, or who, like to go out and do outdoors recreation up in the watershed, different people that are engaged in ways that they just hadn't really thought about trying to connect with. So some of these, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, restaurant owner, Grow NYC, with Rain Barrel Project, climate scientists, New York Restoration Project. So there's a variety of projects around the city with some really interesting examples of stewardship that are going on. And, the same sort of processes that are happening here, very different issues. Combined sewer overflows and stormwater management in the city is a different issue than water quality in the watershed, but it's the same sort of problems, right? It's sedimentation and erosion, runoff. And so it's biological processes that are cleaning the water. And so it's trying to tie together some of those processes in ways where we often don't think about them being connected. So in a really urban setting, you don't necessarily think about, runoff from a farm 100 miles upstate, but it's a lot of the same issues. And so some of these projects really focus on that. And yeah, like one of those specifically.
All right, so this was one of the blog posts that we created. The blog post was not one of the deliverables that the My Woodlot team had asked us to do. This was something that we had talked with them about after reaching out to the BBG and asking them if this would be something that they could use for their website. So the blog post is just, it's more of an overview about why water quality and water preservation is important. So the Brooklyn Botanical Garden has a new feature called the Water Garden. And as Cameron was saying, this feature is not solving a problem that landowners would necessarily have in their backyard. It's dealing with combined sewage overflow. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's just simply when, so the problem is when the rain comes down during heavy rainstorms, the sewers will overflow, and because it's both stormwater and sewage water, it'll discharge into our surrounding bodies of water, which contaminates the water, which is why New Yorkers are advised not to go swimming after a rainstorm. So the Water Garden helps this by collecting the rainwater that's coming down, so it helps in their neighborhood to reduce the storm water discharge. So the great thing about the Water Garden is that it uses natural processes in order to solve this urban problem. So it has riparian buffers, it uses sedimentation. All these issues that are used in the Catskills watershed region are used here as well, just in a more contained environment. It's a great educational tool. We picked the BBG because it has such a large following. We thought My Woodlot would be able to connect with them and to hopefully collaborate on future projects or events. And this is just a great contact for them to have moving forward. And so you can see we have 3 different types of content. We have the video, which was mostly edited by our amazing teammate, Katie Sammer. We have our social media, which we created using Adobe Spark and then used taglines in order to hopefully grab people's attention on social media. And then, of course, we have the text itself.
So another project that we developed specifically as a stewardship story, and actually 2 stewardship stories, is this chestnut tree planting in Highbridge Park. So this is a fairly degraded area of the park. It's about 60 wooded acres. The New York Restoration Projects have been working there for several years and trying to kind of revive the park. There's been a lot of high crime and different problems in the past. So it's the largest planting of American chestnuts in New York City currently. They planted out 300. They actually helped plant some of them, and they're monitoring them over time, working with the Forest Service. They're expecting to lose a fair number of them. They have about a 30 to 40% survival rate, but considering it's planting on about a 70-degree slope and rocks and garbage, it's still pretty good. So it's a really cool project, removing invasives and then planting out these trees, and they're blight-resistant varieties, which is something that is really important. And about 100 years ago, the chestnut blight wiped out most of the chestnut trees in the U.S. And so we're finally starting to have some blight-resistant varieties. And so this is something that landowners can engage in on a small scale or larger plantings like this. So it was really a project that tied together some of the goals for the client and was something that we were passionate about helping with.
So just a couple of reflections on this project. So there were some challenges with this project for sure. Working with a client, I think, was kind of new to a lot of us. So communication was our biggest issue at the beginning. We kind of had mixed signals about what the client wanted versus what we wanted to do. And so after kind of having a back and forth with the client, we were able to figure out content that we wanted and they wanted, and that would be engaging for their users. Secondly, this was a really cool opportunity to learn about where our water comes from. I had basically no idea going into this where our water came from and the kind of organizations that are out there trying to help preserve New York City water. So I think more people should know where their water comes from in New York City because it's very cool. So hopefully you all will go and find out. Thirdly, this is also really great to see kind of some more urban stewardships that are going on in the city. Be able to see this hands-on and in person was very cool. Sometimes in this, academic environment, we can forget that there are real people doing real things outside of the classroom that impact our sustainability and the city's sustainability, and even, the watershed sustainability. So this was a really eye-opening project for me personally, and I was very happy to be a part of it. Yeah, so we'll take any questions.
Hi, I'm just curious, I guess, in terms of metrics for like the visitation rate on the website or anything like that, have they been like launching the material that you created, and have you seen an improvement in terms of the people who are visiting the website and kind of interacting with the material?
So unfortunately, we will not get to see that. So we just gave them all of our deliverables on like Monday. So they have not yet been able to put it on their website or their social media sites. What we're hoping is that if Columbia works with them in the future, they'll use our content, and then the future group will get to see how it's impacting the website. So this is more of a future use thing.
Thank you.
So my question relates to how much the clients wanted information about something quantitative. One of the challenges I find in interacting with clients like this is that they want to, it's easy to put a story up or something, but it's hard to know how to provide the quantitative information about what that intervention does in terms of an environmental benefit. What was your experience in working with them and finding if in that aspect of the work?
One of the things we actually ran into was that some of the information we were offering was a little too quantitative. Which was interesting for us. I mean, even in writing some of the information up, one of the tasks was to write an abstract about the project. And I mean, for me personally, it was very technical and kind of went through, writing an abstract for an academic paper, which it's really not what we're looking. It's more of a summary of the project, and so looking for a lot more of a human voice in it, because it's less about the quantitative metrics for these projects, and it is about really trying to get people to connect with their land. And so, I mean, they have a variety of projects on the website already, but it ranges from, bird watching or writing a poem sitting out in your woods to growing mushrooms on logs or putting in a rain garden. So there's a lot of programs, kind of a mind-blowing number of programs available in New York, but they just really need people to connect with their land and want to use them. So, I mean, it's there. They have the data already kind of on a lot of those things. It's available. But the problem is just trying to get people to care. And so it's, less likely to have someone care, perhaps, just someone on the street or average landowner with something really quantitative heavy, than it is about, oh, I didn't know that I could grow mushrooms on logs in my woods and sell them at this awesome restaurant in the city and make some money off of it, or, that, oh, I have endangered species on my property, and I know about that now because of my forest management plan, which gets me an 80% reduction in taxes. Oh. So finding those sort of leverage points in the conversation was more important than just giving them a whole bunch of data. So, but again, that was part of the communication piece that was interesting for us to kind of figure out. And in some ways, I think they weren't even sure initially what it was they wanted us to do or what it was we'd be capable of doing, and given the time constraints. So it was a lot of back and forth. But I mean, it was mentioned, but we developed a website so that all the media content and everything that we had, they can build on going forward, and other group projects as well. So that's an area that could be explored further. Sorry.
Yeah, so instead of doing that, we decided to focus a lot more on the marketing that we gave them. They talked about opening or expanding on their social media, so going on to different platforms. So we gave them, like the tips and tricks that Cameron talked about for that. But then we also put together a contact list of all the contacts that we made throughout this process, including the people who we contacted but didn't necessarily get to write a story for, and then also put together an events list so that they can kind of intermingle more with other organizations to get their name out there.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.